Hello everyone and welcome again to our 7th Ask the Expert series. Today we're going to talk about SIEM integration, how you can get SAP logs and events into your SIEM system efficiently and without producing too much noise. With me today I have Patrick. He's going to walk you through or answer the questions that we got up front and some of the frequently asked questions that we have seen as part of the project that we've been doing. Before we get started, again, a couple of administrative things, a couple of housekeeping items. Again, the webinar is going to be recorded. You will receive a link to the recording and a friendly email from my colleague Sean to see if you have any questions or concerns, and if you could download and access the recording as well as the slide deck if you want to. If you have any questions during the webinar, please feel free to use the questions panel in your GoToWebinar control panel. Should be on the right hand side, at least that's where it is on my computer. You might have to expand it, click on the little triangle symbol that folds out that questions box and you can type it in. We'll keep an eye on that and we'll answer any questions that will come in during the webinar at the end. It's going to take approximately 30 minutes, plus minus a few minutes, depending on how quickly Patrick is going to get through answering the questions. And with that said, I'm going to hand it over to Patrick and he'll walk you through today's presentation and answering all the questions you had.
Yeah, thank you, Michael. Welcome from my side. My name is Patrick Spitzer. I am working for Xiting since 2018. I started in the consulting department for SAP ABAP authorizations and quickly switched a little bit my area of interest to SAP logs and SIEM integration. And I currently work for the development department for a business technology platform development, but still with a very strong focus on SAP logs and on SIEM integration, and still do projects there, customer projects, so not only development currently. Yeah, you probably know the format and may attended some previous webinars of the Q&A series, and then you may know that this is a very free format, and we collect your questions which you handed in up front. I consolidated the questions, so maybe you won't find your question exactly as you handed it in right there. I consolidated them when they were very similar, and I try to answer them in a very general way so that you just get as much information as possible and as much know-how as possible. So let's start with the first type of question. Let's put it like that. A lot of questions were like, which logs are relevant? Which logs should we integrate into our SIEM system? Yeah, which logs are there in a SAP system? And to be honest, I don't have a specific answer. So I can't tell every customer that this is the high priority log, and then you should connect the second log and then the third log. It really depends on your monitoring purpose, because each log in the SAP world has a different focus. So they don't log all the same, obviously, otherwise there would just be one log. They all have different focuses and different purposes. So what I at least recommend having a look at or think about, there are good starting points. So especially for the customers which have no idea and which just got the requirement from the audit that they should monitor, but they don't have a requirement what exactly they should monitor, I recommend having a look at the security audit log, because the security audit log gives you already a lot, and really a lot, of useful and security relevant information which can be monitored and which you can build really useful use cases and alerts upon. Yeah, like transaction starts, remote function calls, logins of users, any authorization assignments, and so on. So the security audit log is a very, very good point where you can start. You get very useful information of that. If you have a more like technical focus, are your servers running properly? Are there any problems with them? Is a server shutting down outside of a maintenance window or anything like that? Then you should have a look at the system log, because it's everything in there that you may need. So this is maybe another way to go. A third way to go, or having a look at, are the change documents. So anytime where the requirement says you have to monitor if users are changed in a critical way or by non-authorized other users, if roles are assigned which shouldn't be assigned, or profiles, if business data gets changed, any payroll data or whatever you can think of, then you should probably go along with the change documents. It's anything in there that you need, and you should have a look at this. But as I said, this really depends on your monitoring purpose in the SAP world. Then the next type of questions was, what are the typical use cases or alarms which can be recognized in the logs? So what is critical in there? What critical can be recognized in there? What we often do in projects and what we often search for is first and foremost, as authorization experts, the assignment of critical authorizations. So the easiest use case that everyone understands, I think, which works in the SAP world is the assignment of SAP All. So everyone knows this. This should not happen on any productive system. And that's the least, of course, we can search for. But yeah, there are also roles which should not be assigned, maybe some comprehensive roles. And of course, a single authorization objects with the wrong values. For example, full authorizations for SDevelop or anything like that, ST code, are enough to slowly gain more and more authorization and to gain more and more data. So this could also be an attack vector if somebody changes his role or changes his authorizations with a critical authorization object. So that's definitely something you can look for. Then, of course, what a lot of customers have as audit requirement is the system configuration. So are the profile parameters adjusted correctly? That's really an elementary thing. How are the client settings? Yeah, is there any open client? Is a client opened by an attack? So is T000 executed outside of client 000? Or an easy attack vendor is, of course, an easy attack vector is, of course, changing the log settings, right? So if I just change the log settings, then it is not getting logged what I am doing in the system. And if I do something critical. What we always have a look at additionally is the access to critical data. I don't think I have to explain the value of data and how critical it is to protect your data, your user data and your business data. And we always have a look at the access of critical database tables, for example. So I think another easy example that everyone knows is access to a table like USR02. With the execution of critical functionalities, I just call this functionality to be very abstract and to be very general, but to be more precise, we're talking about the execution of critical transactions or function modules or services or reports. It doesn't matter. Just a part of code which does something critical, and we are having a look at it if this gets executed. So for example, in the security audit log, you can log every execution of a transaction. So we can see if a critical transaction gets executed on a productive system. And a last very widespread use case that we are having a look at is debugging. Normally there should be no cases of debugging on a productive system, and it is very easy to see this with SAP logs and to alert on this with SAP logs. So other questions went in this direction about why is there even a problem with integrating SAP logs. So you all know SIEM systems are good at collecting logs and connecting to systems and consolidating the logs, interpreting the logs, and so on. So you probably, or a lot of you probably know that SIEM systems are good, or log management systems are good for this task. So what is the problem in the SAP world? Like, can I just push my logs into the systems? First of all, there are a lot of logs. There are multiple logs. Just to name a few: system log, security audit log, the change logs, or the read access log. So you have to consider all these different logs. In other systems or other software solutions, sometimes it's just one log that you have to connect. In the SAP world, this isn't the case. And you have to know this. And you have to know what the different logs are actually recording and how they are configured and so on. Second problem is the inconsistent format. So every SAP log has a different format. So it's not very easy to train the SIEM system to understand those logs. I've attached 3 examples down there on the slide. So on the left-hand side, there's the system log in a file format. Then we have the table change logs in the middle, at least the structure. And on the right-hand side, we have the read access log. And you see that there are differences in the structure and in the format. Just a small example. In the table change log, you have a date field and a time field. Okay, and in the read access log, you have a timestamp, which combines the date and the time. This is not a huge problem, I know that, but you have to train your SIEM system over and over again for every new log. So every new log produces effort. And additionally, you have an inconsistent interface. So some logs are stored in files, other logs are stored in database tables. Again, the examples at the bottom, I chose them, of course, because of this, just to make this point. The system log that we have right here is in a file format, while the other 2 logs are stored in database tables. With SIEM systems, it is easy to collect log files. Every SIEM system, at least that I know, has a file collector, and there's a great open source file collectors which you could use to connect your SIEM system. So that's not a real issue, but just know that if you have a lot of subsystems, you also have to configure and install, and a lot of file collectors, and of course you have to keep them up to date, right? But other logs are stored in database tables, and one option is to go directly to those database tables, which I would not advise, because as you can probably, or as you know, of course, there is a lot of critical data in an ERP system. So you don't want to have direct access to the database tables for a remote system. So that's critical. I would not advise that. That is maybe a possible way, or at least a technical possible way. The other way would be to go over the application server, but there are barely any APIs. So that's, again, not a real option, because there are no released APIs. You can't just call a function module or call a service, because they aren't there or they aren't released. Last thing is, we have a very high market fragmentation in the SIEM market. There are a lot of solutions, and sometimes it's also hard to separate them. So some log management systems have SIEM capabilities. It's hard to divide those. So what is a real SIEM, what is not, and but still there are so many solutions out there, and not every SIEM system has the same connectors and the same functionalities. And sometimes they are focused on different use cases. So we can't just talk about the SIEM system. We have a lot of SIEM systems which could be connected and which are out there at the customer side. And this makes it really hard for us to get the logs into a SIEM system and to monitor SAP systems. The next questions all went in the way of SAP Enterprise Threat Detections. Some knew that there is this solution from SAP, some didn't. But it all went in the same direction. So I used the general question: is there any SAP solution for SIEM integration or for log collection? So there is no, let's say, free solution which runs directly on the application server ABAP or anything like that, which you can just execute or plan in a background job and then everything is done for you. There's no such thing. There is a dedicated solution, which of course costs license fees, which is called SAP Enterprise Threat Detection. SAP Enterprise Threat Detection collects your log data from your SAP system and evaluates this data. So it's a SIEM system itself. What it can do for you is that it forwards alerts to SIEM systems, but it doesn't forward the logs directly to your SIEM system. So SAP Enterprise Threat Detection is a very sophisticated, very good solution. And it's also a very comprehensive solution. It manages your log, your SAP logs, it analyzes your SAP logs, it manages your events and alerts that were raised in Enterprise Threat Detections, and it does alert forwarding to other SIEM systems. So there is a solution, but not exactly for log forwarding, but there's a SIEM from SAP itself. Other questions went in the direction of the Xiting SIEM connector, because we have our own solution for connecting SIEM system to solve the problems that I previously presented. And some of our customers didn't really understand where are the differences. So they know there's this enterprise threat detection, and they know we have our own SIEM connector. They read something on our website, and they did not really understand where they differ. So what is important to say that we are not a competitor of SAP Enterprise Threat Detection. Those solutions are more complementary, and they have a different focus, and they serve different use cases. That's very important to say. We, as Xiting, focus on connecting SAP systems to existing SIEM systems and to integrate logs of SAP systems into existing SIEM systems. And we do this, let's say, as quick and easy as technically possible. So that's our approach. Do it as quick and easy as possible and connect existing SIEM systems. SAP Enterprise Threat Detection is a very comprehensive SIEM solution which focuses on SAP systems and SAP threats. So it's very specialized on the SAP ecosystem, and it gets regularly updated with new search patterns. So it always has the new search patterns and the new SAP threats, and has some threats which got released by security nodes and so on. So those are different focuses, and there's a different scope behind those solutions, right? Because with ETD, you have, of course, to build up another security operational center, because you have one security operational center which focuses on ETD, and one security operational center which focuses on your SIEM solution which is in place. So those are the difference between those two solutions, which you have to keep in mind when considering how you could solve the requirements from an audit. Now, another question which is often asked is, yeah, which logs do we support in our own solution? Yeah, we can do this quick. We support all that is on the slide right here. So in the ABAP world, we support the security audit log, system log, application log, change document log, and different change logs like table change logs and user change logs, and of course the read access log, which is a very, very customizable log on the application server ABAP. In the HANA world, we support the HANA audit log, which is a very customizable and comprehensive log. And on Java servers, currently we only support security audit log, but it is very easy to extend our connector with new logs. So what we have implemented right now is what we thought is important to get security relevant information, and what customers told us that they need. But still, it's very easy to implement also new logs for this solution. What we additionally offer on top of log extraction and log forwarding is to produce our own Xiting events with our connector. So the connector not only extracts the logs, but also has its own checks which produce alerts. So for example, if a critical profile gets assigned, or if a profile parameter is changed in a critical way, or if client settings, for example, are changed in a critical way, if some critical ICF nodes get activated, then an alert is raised directly from our connector. And it's even extensible in a way so that customers can write their own checks. So whatever they want to check and whatever they want to run, they can write any additional class in ABAP, just run their own checks and extract their own data and send this to their SIEM system. Yeah, then what also was asked up front is what do we need to install for the SIEM connector, or do we need any additional servers or resources when using the Xiting solution? What you see here is the architecture of this solution. So we deliver our solution to customers, and they need to import them to their SAP systems, or deploy a deployable archive, for example, for the Java servers. And then we have such a central and satellite system architecture. That means that we have a central ABAP system, because this is a ABAP solution for the central system. And the central system has connections to all the satellite systems. And the central system takes care of collecting all the logs from the satellite systems. After it has collected the logs, it sends the logs to a SIEM system via the connector. So that's the approach that we currently follow. Regarding the additional servers or resources, no, there are no additional servers needed. You can just reuse your existing ABAP servers. And we have made the experience that there are no additional resources needed. So customers were happy by just installing it on existing servers and run it. Next question was also, or next bunch of questions were also about our SIEM connector, which SIEM systems are supported, because we have seen a lot of different SIEM systems at the customer side. We don't have an exact list of which SIEM systems are currently supported, because we focus on implementing well-defined standards instead of solution-specific technologies. So standards like syslog, TCP, or TLS, a file transfer using formats like common event format or JavaScript object notations and so on, really makes our life easier when talking to existing SIEM systems and integrating them. We have not planned to introduce any solution-specific technologies. Yeah, as I said, it rather makes that sense to implement well-defined standards, and we have very good experience at the customer side, for example, with ArcSight Curator, Splunk, or Sentinel, and they all understand these formats, because these formats are actively used by other technologies like Linux servers. Last question that was handed up front go all in this direction of how complex or expensive SIEM connection projects are. What is the effort to connect a SIEM system? I can't make a, let's say, general statement. How long does it take to connect a SIEM system? Because this depends on various factors, right? As always in IT projects. So, but what I can say, or what I can do, is to split this a little bit up and to give you some experience that we have made in our SIEM connection projects. So, building up the technical connection between SAP systems and SIEM systems is made easy by our SIEM connector. Of course, that's what we are trying to achieve with our solution. What I don't only want to talk about our solution, what I can say is, if you don't use such a third-party software, doesn't matter if this is our SIEM connector or from anyone else, this doesn't matter. If you don't use such a piece of software, it is way harder to connect an SAP system. So we had customers that implemented or connected a file-based log, mostly the security audit log, and then after this decided to buy such a piece of software like our SIEM connector that that does the job for them, so that they in the future just need to activate more logs if they need more logs. But they were not happy by implementing it for themselves, because you have this effort of installing such collectors, such file collectors, and train the SIEM system and keep the file collectors up to date. You have to do this over and over again for every new interface that you want to implement. And if you have a large landscape with 100 servers, you need to sometimes need to install 100 file collectors depending on your network infrastructure. So it's highly advisable to use such a piece of software which does the job for you. But of course, if you want to do a proof of concept and just integrate, for example, the security audit log, this is of course a way to go to install a classic file collector, which every SIEM system has. Then there is another thing to do, and that's is building the use cases or patterns or alerts and dashboards and so on. So this is on the SIEM side. And I would say this is of medium complexity. So the SIEM team normally knows exactly what to do and what they need to build up in the SIEM on the SIEM side. But we as SAP experts have to tell the SIEM team what to search for, right? So this is a team effort. You or we and the SIEM teams have to work together to build this up. What I can say that optimizing alerts and eliminating false positives takes time. So sometimes there are some exceptions in a process that runs every day just fine. There is an exception like once a year, and then you just experience such an alert once a year. You can't test it, and maybe only a few people know them, but you haven't talked to them. And so it really takes a lot of time to sort out all the false positives that can arise in such a monitoring landscape. So you have to plan in really a lot of time until such a solution runs without false positives. We have to talk here about 6 to 12 months. But of course, you don't sit there and wait until the false positives comes up. They just come up, and then you have to analyze this and just consider this the next time. What we have learned is in large SAP landscapes that there is a really high effort for including and talking to all responsible and affected employees and persons. If customers have like 100, 200 SAP systems, there are normally a lot of system owners and a lot of security and basis administrators, and they all want to know what you are doing right there. Because in the future, you are monitoring their systems. And normally, they are responsible for their systems. Now you come into place and tell them what to do, and they don't like this, of course. So, and you monitor the users which are on their systems. So it's really advisable to talk to all the stakeholders, to all the responsible and affected employees as soon as possible and get them on your side, and also inform the users. You should really do this because in the future they are monitored after implementing such a solution. And again, what I can say is that we often do POC projects, which normally have the scope of 5 person days. So if you use a partner software which does the technical job for you, then building up the technical connection and getting the logs into the SIEM system is really fast. So this is not, you don't have to put in much effort to build up the technical connection. Okay, so I'm through with all the questions that were handed in up front. I hope I consolidated them right. Michael, are there any questions during the webinar?
Yes, there was at least one question. Hold on, let's see. Oh, there are actually 3 of them. And one question is there a connector built for FireEye?
As I previously said, we don't have we have solution-specific connectors, but I would really guess that FireEye understands syslog, because every SIEM system and log management system understands syslog. Syslog is a Unix, or is a standard from the Unix and Linux world, and SIEM and log management system all want to integrate Linux servers. And so I'm very, very sure that FireEye understands us.
Okay, thank you. And then the next question is, what about DDIC and SAP Star? I guess they can be monitored by SIEM solutions in addition to basis team?
Yes, of course, they can be monitored. So you can, if you especially want to DDIC SAP standard users, you can filter your logs for those SAP standard users, and you see all critical actions that were made by those users. So it's really easy, and that's also a common use case, and that's also where our connector, for example, has a special search pattern for. So this is possible and highly advisable to do that, yeah.
All right. And then last one that I see here, are there any legal compliance requirements that would force SAP customers to analyze and evaluate their SAP logs and log data via a SIEM integration? Is this a must-have for specific industries or segments, or is this all nice to have?
As far as I'm concerned, until now, this is not a must-have, but a lot of auditors start to build up the requirement, because they are asking, can you really prove that there were no critical actions made by anyone who has the authorizations for that? So more and more customers come to us and ask what they can do to fulfill this requirement. So legal requirement, no, but more and more auditors are asking for such a proof.
Okay, perfect. Thank you very much. That was it, as far as I can see. Again, we'll wrap it up now. You'll get a link to the recording well, there's actually one more quick question. Let's see. Does SAP have an app for QRadar instead of a SIEM connector?
SAP does not have an app for QRadar. What I know is that SAP Enterprise Threat Detection can forward alerts to QRadar. So they have this on their website, especially for QRadar. So there is an interface to talk to QRadar. But then, of course, you have to build your alerts and the whole patterns and the whole analysis engine in ETD. And then when it gets recognized, the threat or the alert, only after that it gets pushed to QRadar.
Okay.
That would be a way, but there's no free app or something like that.
Sounds good. Thank you very much, Patrick. Much appreciate your time today and your insights. And again, we'll wrap it up. You'll receive a link to the recording here within the next 24 hours. And we'll hope we see you on the next webinar.
Bye.